I loved painting because I've been painting since I was a kid. So instead of me making products at that time, I really wanted to paint and make prints. And I couldn't find the kind of job that I was looking for. And that's why I decided to start my own brand.
Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and in this episode I'm talking to Vidhi from the Ink Bucket, who's walking us step by step through how to do a floral painting in gouache. It's super different than the watercolor that we usually talk about on this show, and I think you're really going to like it. I definitely did. And before we jump in, I just want to fill you in. You're going to hear us talking about it in the video too, but you can enter a giveaway in this video to win Vidhi's new book. And all you have to do is like the video and leave a comment and you'll be entered. So make sure you do that. But without further ado, let's just jump right in. Vidhi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Becca. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. I am so excited to have you here. We've been trying to do this for a while, but things just kept coming up. And I'm just so happy to have you here because your work has always caught my eye. It's just such an interesting, it's just so different than all the other things I see on my feed, and I've always wanted to have you on here, so I'm just really excited.
Thank you so much.
But before we get started, I always just like to ask people, can you give us a little rundown of who you are, what you do, where you are in your case too, because it's different than where I am.
So my name is Vidhi. I am from India, and I currently live in Bangalore, which is South India.
I've been there, actually.
Really? In Bangalore?
Yeah.
When?
In 2018. I had a friend who went there for business, and he lived there for a year, and we went and visited him. I actually did a meetup there, and I didn't know you were there. I would have totally invited you.
I moved in 2018. That's so amazing. I am a textile design graduate from NIFT Delhi. And after my graduation, I worked for 3 months, and after that I started working on my own brand. It's called the Ink Bucket, and we do stationery and lifestyle accessories, and all the prints that you see on the products, they're all hand painted. And so that's what I do right now full time. And I've also worked with other brands. I've done freelance work. I've collaborated with different brands, but the brand is what takes up most of my time now.
And so you said you studied textile design, but the stuff that you're, the merchandise that you're selling now, none of it's textile, is it?
Yeah, no, not so much. It's mostly paper. We're getting into home and fabrics. So you'll see that in the coming weeks and months. But when I graduated, for textile designers, there are mostly 2 options in India. You either go to an export house, you work with a designer. The 2 big options that you have, and I didn't want to do any of those. And I loved painting because I've been painting since I was a kid. So instead of me making products at that time, I really wanted to paint and make prints. And I couldn't find the kind of job that I was looking for. And that's why I decided to start my own brand.
I feel like that's the story of any entrepreneur. I couldn't find the job I wanted, so I made it for myself.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
But for people who have never heard of you or just don't know your work right away, it's all gouache, right? That's the medium that you use to create all of those. Yeah. Okay. And I feel like that's why your work caught my eye so quickly, is because it's, like I said, it's so different than what I see on my feed. And I think that most of the audience that's following me or watching this show, it's going to be a similar thing, because a lot of calligraphers and letterers just naturally follow watercolor artists instead. I don't know what it is about those two mixing together, but the majority of the other art that I see that's not calligraphy and lettering is always watercolor. And for some reason, gouache isn't so much of a thing. So I'm really excited to see your lesson, because I think that a lot of people are going to realize that there's another really cool option to do here. But for anybody who doesn't know, can you sort of explain what the difference is between using gouache and watercolor, and why were you drawn to gouache?
So I've also used a lot of watercolors. Initially, in fact, my early days of painting, I used to use a lot of watercolors. I've also done hand lettering. That's something that I got quite interested in right after college. But then it was a very natural, gradual switch to gouache. And after I started using gouache, it just felt like it made more sense for the kind of products that I was doing, the prints that I was doing, and stuff like that. So gouache it's actually very similar to watercolors, except for the fact that gouache is opaque. So when you see gouache artworks, they're going to look much more bright to you than watercolors. So the level of pigment is much higher than watercolors, which is why it's opaque, it's smooth, it has a matte finish, but it works very, very similar to watercolors. It's a water absorbent paint, and you mix it, it gets reactivated with water. So the way you use it is quite same, but the application and the execution sort of comes out to be different. But another good thing about gouache is that you can also use it as watercolors. So if you put too much water, it starts behaving like watercolors.
Yeah, I love that, because I think a lot of people don't want to, they don't want to have to go out and buy watercolor and gouache if they want to try both. So they could use gouache or watercolor too and just like experiment with it, which is really cool. Okay, cool. Well, I do really want to get into your lesson and let people see, how the execution of watercolor and gouache is different, because you are going to show it. But before we do, I also want people to know that you wrote a book about all of this, because that's super exciting. And at the time of this recording, it's not out yet, but it's available for pre-order. So I'm going to link to it down below. But I also want to make sure people know that you told me we could do a giveaway and give away one for free. So yeah, so all you have to do to enter to win one is just like the video and then leave a comment down below, and we'll choose a winner and ship you a book. It sounds like the book is really similar to what you're going to do in this lesson. So I think we should just jump in and kind of give people a taste of it, and then we can chat more after.
Done. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get started with painting an artwork, and I'll take you through my painting process. I'm using Winsor & Newton gouache paints and a couple of different sizes of paint, watercolor brushes. I'm using a Winsor & Newton brush, a Daler-Rowney brush, and a brush by Brustro. I already have a sketch with me here, so I've sketched out a lily of the valley and these two guys here, which are two of my houseplants. I'm going to be using a lot of greens from here for the leaves, and then we'll move on to doing the flowers. But these are basically Winsor green mixed with white in different ratios, and that's what gave me these different shades. So I have a couple of light tones, medium tones, and dark tones here. So first I'm taking a Winsor & Newton brush in a size 5, and I'm gonna do the background of my leaves first. So I'm taking a few shades from here. I'm gonna put a little bit of water and reactivate this gouache paint. So when you're painting, make sure the consistency is not too thin. So I'm taking a light tone, and I'll start with the tip of the leaf and move along the edge of the leaf, and I'm basically just applying a flat coat of paint to create a base layer. And now while this is wet, I'm going to take a darker tone, and from the bottom I'm going to create upward strokes. So I'm going to get a subtle gradation, and also when you move along the edges, make sure your brush is not too stiff. So you move and create sort of waves. And the same way, I'm also going to paint the smaller leaves. You can also start with the dark tone and then create strokes with the lighter tone. So here I'm starting with the darker tone, and I'm again creating waves towards the edges. And it's just a flat application. And because I have a slight curve here in the leaf, I'm going to take the lighter tone and I'm going to paint the curve with this light tone here. And now we wait for these layers to dry out. And while they are drying out, I'm going to take the green again and paint the last leaf as well. So now for the lily of the valley, they're usually white, but just to make them more visible, I'm painting them with a pink. You can use whatever color you feel like using, but I'm gonna take a pink, and with a thinner brush I'm going to create again a flat coat. I'm just going around the outlines and then filling it in. Now you repeat the same for all the flowers. I'm taking a third shade of green now, and I'll create a few strokes on our leaves. So I'm going to start from the bottom, and I'm changing the pressure on my brush as I move along. So right now, for example, I'm putting a lot of pressure, and then I'm gradually lifting it up. So the strokes become thinner towards the end of the leaf. The same way, I'm also going to create shadows on the bigger leaf. So you start from the bottom and then gradually lift your brush up. Now with a charcoal black or a brown or a green, paint the stem of the flower. For this, I'm using only the tip of my brush. Now once the base layer of the flower has dried, take a darker shade of pink, and starting from this end of the flower, just create a few strokes. So that gives a nice shadow on our flower. And you could also take a really light shade of the same pink or even a white, and just create along the edge, create a slight highlight. I'm just adding one stroke on the right edge of the right side of each flower, and this one is done. Now moving on to this, so I'm changing the color of the leaves. They're ideally green, but I'm going to use two different shades of blues here. I'm using this blue and again creating a flat application. Since this leaf has a curve, so this is the back side, I'm going to leave the back side and just paint the front using a flat application. And then repeat the same for the other two as well. Now before I paint the last leaf, I'm going to take a darker shade of blue and paint the other side of this leaf. And I'll leave it there. Now with the same color, I'm also painting the third leaf. I'm using the same charcoal black to paint the stem of these leaves as well. So this basically starts from here and it continues all the way down. Again, does not have to be smooth. This starts from here and goes down and starts from here. Now while this dries, I'm going to paint the last set of leaves. So these are the leaves that I've sketched here, and to paint this I'm going to first paint the darker background, and then once it dries we'll paint the veins. So I'm taking a dark green and creating a flat base layer again. Now we have to wait for this layer to completely dry before we start making the veins in a lighter shade. And in the meantime, I'll paint the veins for these leaves. So I'm going to take the darker shade of blue and starting from the base of the leaf, I'm going to gently decrease the pressure on my brush as I move towards the edge. And then I'll create the side veins. That. The same way, I'm going to create the veins here as well. For the third leaf, I'm using a lighter shade of blue. Now coming back to this bunch, I'm taking a very, very pale yellow and I'm going to start from the base and create a vein in the center. And now the side veins. And they're all pretty close to each other. I'm not using a very smooth motion of my hand. Now once your artwork is dry and the paint has dried entirely, take an eraser and erase the pencil marks and we're done.
Okay, well, I loved all of that. That was super fun. It was pretty much exactly what I wanted out of a lesson like this. It made me, like, as you were teaching that, I was going through my drawers, like trying to see if I had any gouache paint because I want to try it so bad. I do have some. It's really old, but we'll see if it works.
I'm sure it will. Just need to add water and it will.
Yeah. I did have a realization though while you were painting that, and I know you said at the beginning that the process of painting watercolor and gouache is a little bit different, and I think, like, to me what stands out the most is that gouache feels more like drawing than watercolor. You know, like in watercolor you're kind of hoping that the colors blend nicely together, whereas in gouache you can like perfectly add exactly what you want and it's not going to bleed and stuff like that. That really like vibrant vein that you added in those last leaves, I feel like you can't do that as easily with watercolor unless you let it all dry and then come back to it and stuff. It just doesn't look the same. So I guess that's fair to say that it's more like drawing.
Yeah, I think you got that right. And I also feel that with watercolors, it's sort of like, it's more free flowing. So, you know, your watercolors, one color does end up mixing with another, and that has its own beauty. But if you don't want that, and if you want precise lines, and if you want bold shapes, then I think gouache works much, much better.
Yeah, it's a totally different look, even though it's a really similar medium. I love that. Okay, well, yeah, that made me want to play with it all really badly right away. So I'm just going to end this video. Bye. I'm just kidding. Okay, so I do want to just like remind people to enter to get the book, because if you liked this video, it's just more of that, right? So like the video, leave a comment down below. You can literally say anything and you'll be entered in the draw to win, and we'll let you know if you won. But Vidhi, can you tell people where they can find you and where they can find your merchandise and all that kind of stuff from you before I let you go?
Sure. So right now we're primarily selling through my website, the merchandise. It's theinkbucket.in, but we also sell on Amazon.com, and we're also working on getting the products onto Amazon in the UK, in the UAE. So all that is in the pipeline, and I think by the time the video goes out, we might have it on all these platforms as well. And you can definitely find me on Instagram. My handle is theinkbucket.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll link to all those things down below so people can find them really easily. But thank you so much for coming on. It was great to finally get this all put together and see that lesson from you. I can't wait to try it, and I'm sure other people can't as well. So yeah, I think we'll leave it at that. I know it's nighttime for you in India right now, so I'll let you get on with the rest.
It's the start of the night.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks again so much, and
Thank you so much, Becca.
I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.